Welcome to another episode of the Working Audio Tools podcast, the audio podcast where we focus on mixing, mastering, the audio industry, the psychology and the philosophy behind mixing and mastering, the work we all do on a daily basis. We sometimes critique and constructively compare or constructively critique and compare mixers, and we regularly interview professionals from the audio industries, including YouTube and the mixing and mastering worlds. This week, we want to discuss a topic that is multifaceted, very difficult to navigate, very personal, even geographical, which we're going to discuss a little bit later, and that is pricing. And the book, How to Price Your Platypus, comes to mind, the concept being that the platypus doesn't exist. So how do you price something that doesn't exist? But in our case, we're literally pricing services and effectively products. So it's a bit more tangible, but there's many different things to consider. This episode is sponsored by Baby Audio, the maker of creative instruments and effects for music production. Baby Audio plugins are all about solving problems and adding character to your mix, from stylish heavy compression with the IHNY2 to dynamic resonant control and suppression with Smooth Operator. Head over to babyaudio.io to learn more about their extensive range of plugins and get 15% off any order with the special Working Audio Tools code that we have got generated on your behalf, WHAT15 at checkout. There'll be links in the description below. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
It's very, very difficult because obviously, in terms of let's talk geography. So I'm in Scotland. I'm not in a competitive part of the country. I'm not in a part of the country that's bustling, with artists getting signed. I think, the last successful Scottish artist probably was Lewis Capaldi. Not many. Where if you go into someplace like London, it's very, very competitive. There are tons and tons and tons of artists trying to make it in London. And we know many, many, many engineers and many, many, many studios in London. So obviously, in regards to pricing, there is probably, a set maybe fee that, many people will find, the average in London, but it can go very cheap. Like I know a few mixing engineers in certain genres that have to I call it maybe lowballing, but, have to do it pretty cheap because the genre that they work in genuinely can't afford. And so again, you've got the difficulty of your clientele. Again, you will have some clientele that will be able to afford more than others. And again, it's who you target to. If you target to a certain budget, then you'll have to cater for that certain budget. If you value yourself a little bit higher and you want a little bit more of a higher brow clientele that, might be with labels, and that's fucking another thing. Again, you can go globally, you can go, industry wide. So there are various factors and it's very difficult. For me, opening my studio, it's still something that I know I'm going to have to tweak. I have been a little bit tentative on the pricing side because I think that I value my time a lot more than what I think other people in Scotland value it. So to kind of give you context where I am, I was speaking to a few people that are based in Scotland and they were telling me that there's people out there that are doing 3 tracks fully mixed and mastered in a day for like 600 quid.
Including recording?
Yeah, including recording.
Holy... What are they recording through, a Scarlett?
I won't go into details because it's somebody else's business, right? But At the end of the day, that's what I'm kind of up against. So I've had to come to a place where I have to be happy with what I feel, is a price for my time. So if you go on my website, you'll see the prices. I'll tell you now. So for a full mix, and that is a stereo mix, unlimited revisions, and that also includes an Atmos mix as well, I'm £300 for a mix. That's what I'm doing. Many people may find that really cheap. If I was in a more competitive place like London, I would charge higher. However, I'm in a place where, there aren't many artists. People don't have as much money. People aren't expecting to pay as much. A lot of people in Scotland, a lot of bands, they really just kind of think that, you can go to a rehearsal room, get a recording done, bang out an EP. That's the way I used to do it. I remember when I recorded with my band back in the day. We did 3 songs, 3 hours, fully recorded and fully mixed. I don't want to say fully mixed. I'm like, it was
I don't want you to
genuine.
say fully mixed
Yeah,
either.
no, it wasn't. Genuinely, it was just like, right, a bit of compression there, ride it there. It was very kind of back, like balls to the walls, fader job, maybe a tiny little bit of EQ, and he was just like, right, there it goes, bit of reverb.
But if the engineer's good and they're getting the sources and the balancing right on the way in, it could do.
Yeah,
Could
but
be
it sounded
that, sure.
shit. So it sounded shit, because at the end of the day, that's all he had. The way that it used to work, and I think some people still expect it to work, is like the old Beatles approach, where if you're super, super, super rehearsed, you can come in, book 3-4 hours, and you can get fucking quite a few songs done in that time. I know a few artists that will just pay for the recording and they'll get somebody else to mix it. But again, there's tiers. I normally find that artists that maybe, okay, I don't want to say take themselves a little bit more seriously. That's maybe a bit rude. But I think for somebody, a band or an artist that maybe wants to see themselves in a place to get signed, they obviously realise that they want to get the best result to send out to A&Rs. Right? Again, it's like if you pay, a couple of £100 and you get a guy that gives you a 10-minute mix, it's going to sound like a 10-minute mix. But obviously, if you invest a little bit more, get a good recording, send it to somebody else to get mixed, and then send it to get mastered, you pay a little bit more, but it sounds better. And then it gives you a better chance of getting signed. Because what many people don't understand is that A&Rs get hit with so many records every day. And it is brutal. And I've spoke to a few A&Rs and they'll be like, Paul, sometimes I'll listen to a song for 15 seconds and that's me. And Paul, I don't even bother listening to the rest of the EP. I'm like, you're joking. He's like, no, Paul, like I can make very, very quick judgments. But
I tell you why that might be though, sorry to interject, is I think if there's bands assuming that the traditional model of, we're going to record some songs and then we're going to get signed and then we're going to go into Abbey Road and record the album properly, those days don't exist anymore. The A&Rs are looking for products that they can put on the shelf now with bands who already have a following. So we're getting a bit off subject with that, but the concept of a band coming in, doing a whole album in a day and having it mixed in a day, to then get signed and then do it properly, as it were, those days are gone. And artists, I think, need to understand that they need to be delivering the best thing possible. But the problem you're fighting against there is a lot of artists don't have the knowledge or the experience to understand that way of recording is not going to compete with a CLA mix.
No.
Maybe they can't hear the difference and that's fine and they're just happy to get the recording out there. Maybe it's just for fun. God, some people do this just for fun. I've forgotten what those days are like, but there's different expectations, I guess. So that comes down to, I think, a key thing we'll be talking about in this episode, which is having the conversation and managing expectations. If somebody wants a Green Day sounding album but expects to have it recorded and mixed and mastered in a day, that's going to require a conversation.
Mm.
Now, we could get into the weeds about what kind of we're targeting all that, but I just want to circle back to something you said. So you're £300 for a mix and a master per song. Is that
not master? Sorry, not master. It's £300. I don't do the master, but you can send it. I would personally send them to Marcel, and Marcel's £50 the master. So I would say, look, it's £350 mix and mastered, but it won't be me that does the master. I like to separate it because I'm not comfortable in a place where I've not really got into the weeds of mastering yet. So I'm not about to charge for something that I'm not actively trying to do my best at.
Yeah, okay. So that's just the mixing and the Atmos. That's not the recording.
Correct, yeah. Just
okay.
for what now? The price that I'm doing per song for recording and the full mix is £600, and that's per song. Now, obviously, when I said that to the guy who knows somebody in Fife, he was like, "Oh, Paul, that's recording and mixed one song." I was like, yeah, but again, it's unlimited revisions, and we take the time that we take. That's the difference. That's where the risk is for me. That I'm not putting people on a clock. I'm saying to them, £600 for a song. We'll take the time that it takes to get the recordings done, and then we'll take the time that it takes to get the mix done, and then it'll be done.
So this is where this conversation could get quite divisive, because that offer or that structure can leave you open to timing problems. And by that I mean, you're saying £300 to record a song. Is there a time limit on that, or is it like someone's gonna come in and spend a week in your studio recording?
The way I see it is 600. So I know what you're saying. It's £300 to record, £300 for the mix. But it's for me, it's how you manage the client. So obviously, what I would do is I would sit and have a chat.
You have to have a limit on that of that is a day in the studio maximum.
Yeah,
you have to get the recording done in a day. You can't take 5 days. Otherwise, they'll be like, yeah, I'm just going to have a smoke and do some keyboards here and 17 million vocal overdubs. Yeah, but Paul, you said one song for £300. We're having one song for £300.
Yeah, but
it's not my fault. It's taking a week, But
at the end of the day, right, it's about how you manage your client at the end of the day. But I think it's different for me because I was in sales for a long time. You know what I mean? I was a sales manager, not an audio, by the way. I was fucking completely different. So I know how to manage customers. At the end of the day, that's what they are. So again, it's all about the conversations that you have. At the end of the day, I can always choose who I work with. If it's £600 and they come in and I'm getting a bad vibe and I'm getting a vibe that this is like, right, you're completely unrehearsed and it's just not going to be working, then I can just say, no, what, it's not going to work, or maybe I'd charge a bit extra.
Let me play devil's advocate. You can pick and choose who to work with if you can afford to.
When I can.
Okay,
I can. So,
and that's fine.
Yeah. So, but I've got another tier. So the way I work it is I'm always thinking about how much work is going to be needed. And I kind of got this from Audio Animals a little bit in that episode. Watch that. It's a very, very good listen.
Yep.
Now, what I do is I've got a tier. So I've got £300, right, for a full mix, £600 record and mix one song, produce, record, and mix is £1,000 a song. And that was the one that got many Scottish engineers and a little bit like, whoa, Paul, nobody's paying that. But then to me, I'm sitting there thinking, right, £1,000 is a lot of money, but I'm talking fully fucking production. Like if you come to me and I say, right, £600 to record and mix, I'm saying to the artist, that is on the assumption that you are rehearsed, that we can genuinely go in, do the song, you've got all the parts played out, you've got blah, blah, blah. And if they say, well, I'm not really that versed and I need to work on blah, 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 I'll be like, right, well, you'll be £1,000 then because that's production. And then that's how you manage the client. You need to have the conversation to figure out, right, do you need production? That's going to cost that. Do you need recording? That's going to cost that. And then it's about how you build that in. I think £1,000 is at the end of the day, would I be that bothered to have 5 days in the studio to do one song? And I don't think it would take fucking 5 days, Jesus. But if you think about it, £1,000 for 5 days, that's a good wage, in my opinion. Some people may disagree, but it's how you manage the session and it's how you manage the client. You should never be in a position where you're fucking one song's taking you 5 days. You should never be in that position. It's how you manage the recording. It's how you manage the conversation. You know
Tell
what I mean?
that to Axl Rose.
Yeah, totally, yeah. But at the end of the day, we're not dealing with... Those days are gone now. And I think
we're not dealing with their ego. They're dealing with your ego.
Yeah, totally. Fuck you. But, you know, the conversations that I've had with many industry professionals is, and we've had it on this podcast, I think Joe Carroll talked about it quite a lot, and maybe Tim Palmer did as well. And it was all about managing your clients. You know,
Yeah.
A lot of what is client management. Tura Medina talked about it as well.
Oh, so, such a common theme, especially if you've heard the Six Figure Home Studio podcast.
Yeah, so for me, it's about valuing your time, but being able to structure it in a way where the client understands this is what you're paying for, which is something that Audio Animals does very well. However, we'll speak about it. Obviously, Ed had an Instagram post and he kind of went through the Audio Animals approach and then was advised.
We'll get onto that because there's a lot to unpack. But to summarize your studio thing quickly, when is the studio opening?
Right, so Laura's already done a class, so technically it's open.
No. When are you opening the studio for recording?
Right, so I am waiting to do the video first because I'm very methodical. So in my head, I need to do the studio tour video first. We have planned to do the studio tour video not this week, but next week. So basically, as of next week, probably I think Friday, next Friday is the date that me and my wife have agreed. That's it. Like she's had a class in there, went really well. So I know that it's functioning from that point of view. And then I'll get loads of business cards made. But the studio tour video was a big, big thing for me because I want that element of professionalism where I think what many people miss is that they want people to invest in their work, but their websites look like fucking dog shit. My website isn't great, but I was thinking if I do a really good job on the studio tour video, it's very engaging. And I think many people expect a visual representation, you know, before they ever walk into someone. It's like before anything I buy, I'll watch like fucking 8-9 fucking YouTube videos on it. You know, I mean, it's just the way I've always been. And
we do.
Yeah, and I always look for visuals. So again, if the first thing I do when I'm looking at other studios, I'm looking at photos. I want to see their rooms. I want to know the gear that's in there. Many people don't give a shit about that. But if you're able to package it in a way where you can sell yourself and your studio and your business and your services really well and professionally in like a really well structured, maybe 12-minute video going through everything, you might do all right.
It's making it personal. So there I was thinking Paul would just say, yeah, we're going to be open on the 1st of December. We got a 5-minute answer at why it isn't open yet. Okay, so moving on. I mean, just to finish that, I with your pricing, I can hear keyboards rattling globally right now. Paul Third, right, I have an opinion, and it's not going to be bullet pointed. I mix on DT 770s. Don't do a Mockney accent.
By the way, just to clear that up, right? I'm going to just clear it up. The reason I do the whole Cockney thing, right, is genuinely just because, like, it's just an accent that I fall into. I don't do it on purpose. Many people have had an issue, probably Cockneys. Well, I am sorry, it's just a voice that I fall into quite a lot. Right? I'm British, Scottish, and I got brought up with British TV at the end of the day. Only fools and horses, right? Apples and pears going up the stairs, right? EastEnders, right, down a fucking market, right? It's just an accent, right? And the only reason I do it is because it's very easy for me to slip into. And I genuinely do believe...
You do it very well. It's like I slip into Australian accents, but I married an Australian many years ago. Yeah. I did my prison sentence on that, so...
And genuinely, I will just say, and if I was to go into like a Glaswegian accent, I don't really think that people would like this accent. It's really nasally. And for any Glaswegians watching, fucking get it up, yeah. But they'll love that because we're Scottish, and that's what we...
And Paul's studio address will be in the video description if anyone wants to find him. Anyway.
Ouija's are another breed.
All right, moving on quickly. I think your pricing there is strong. I commend your decisions with that. I think it makes sense. I think over time you will eventually define boundaries that you will need to communicate. I think experience will give you or lead you in the direction of what people want to know. If you look on a lot of websites, they basically have an idiot's guide to using a studio, frequently asked questions section, which I would suggest to do for your website if you haven't already. Just defining, what mixing one song is. Is it a one-day job or is it a maximum of 5 days? Set boundaries so that way you can help manage expectations.
This episode is also sponsored by SONIBLE. SONIBLE offer the Smart Bundle, which includes plugins that myself and Ed have all used in the past on our sessions. These plugins include the Content Aware Smart Limit, the Source Adaptive Smart Reverb, the Intelligent Equalizer that is Smart EQ4, which I will run through a little bit later, the Content Aware Smart Gate, the Spectrodynamics Smart Comp 2, and the Content Aware Smart DS. All of them deliver results within just a few seconds, and you can try them out by utilising SONIBLE's 30-day free trial. There will be a link in the description of this video, or you could simply go to sonible.com.
Now, you mentioned audio animals. This is my 2 cents on all this pricing thing, because I'm still none the wiser despite having several conversations. And I've had conversations with Paul, with Chris Graham, with MSM, and with an online marketing guy today, which was quite fascinating. So the Audio Animals, Paul from the Audio Animals came on the podcast. Very good episode if you haven't heard it, because he unveiled the mystery behind their pricing, which if you see their social media posts, they advertise mixing from £100 and mastering from £50. And if you go on their website, you can in fact get a mix for £100 and a master for £50. However, there are caveats. And the website is very cleverly laid out so that, if you do a 2-stem mix, that's £100. That's processed audio. If it's a 2-stem mix of unprocessed audio, that's £200. So there's a scale, and as you add more tracks, the price goes up to actually some very healthy prices. And then you can add on Atmos mixes, Dolby Atmos mixes, mastering, whatever. There's plenty of options, and it's a very well laid out, customized website that they've made themselves actually, which makes sense. The idea being that it caters for many different budgets, from your 2-track YouTube beat guys with one vocal to full-on productions and everyone in between. I thought I would adopt that, and I spoke to Paul about it, and I told him, I said, I'm going to nick your idea. I'm going to just simplify things a bit, change the prices. And on my website, I listed I think 5 different mixing prices, like 0 to 10 tracks, 11 to 30, 30 to 50, and 50 plus or something like that. I can't remember. With different prices I was happy to work for, and then mastering on top, which I now offer. I never wanted to offer mastering, but so many clients don't know the difference between mixing and mastering. It's just easy to say, yes, I can do both. And I published, and Paul referred to a post that I put up that said mixing from £150 and mastering from 50. And what was your reaction to that?
I understood the reason why you did it. The only thing that I was concerned was the perception that people may have of you, because the issue that you have, and this is something that I raised to Ed, was that it requires somebody to go onto the website, and it may piss certain people off when all they're going to see, and then there is nothing wrong with what Paul Ashmore and Ed was doing here, was that it's from, right? From is the most important word, but the problem is that people online don't see from. They see 150.
The headline.
They see 150
exactly.
So they go onto your website, they click onto it, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, you said it was going to be £150," and then before you know it, it can jump up, and they maybe what they require is maybe 450 or something like that. So it might actually piss people off. And then I made another point that you might have somebody that goes for a really budget kind of style option, limits the work that you can do as an engineer, because you're only as good as the work that you're given. And then again, if you've got one artist is like, right, £150, there we go, that's what I've released, and tags Ed in it, and then another client's looking to maybe a little bit more of a, not highbrow, but a little bit more of an artist that maybe wants to spend a bit more money. They see that and they go, that wasn't very good. And there's nothing Ed could have done with it, because he did the best with the stems he was given. And then they might sit there and go, I don't really think that he's worth X, Y, and Z, because they value him on the £150 mix. That's the problem.
And so you raised a good point there, which I was going to get to, which is perception management, which I think is key in this industry. And I coined a phrase years ago, which hasn't taken off because it's not very succinct, which is basically the key to success is found in the ability to manipulate the perceptions of others. And I don't mean manipulate in a negative, I'm going to trick you sort of way. What I mean is how you can present yourself can influence people's perceptions of you. And how I stumbled on this was when I was doing my live sound business. When I started that in 2015, I thought, right, I'm going to do loads of social media posts about it. And I thought, because the whole thing with social media then was, when Facebook was actually relevant, was people would, especially musicians, would post about their gigs, and obviously people still do, but it seemed to be coming into the conscious or subconscious mind, at least at that point. Now we're saturated and no one, we've gone the other side, no one cares. But at the time, if you posted a lot about different things, people would assume you were busy and then make the assumption that because you were busy, you were good. So I basically based my sound business off this and would post about every bit of new equipment, every gig that I was doing, behind the scenes things. And I'd literally see people, musicians on gigs, whether I was playing drums or doing sound, and be like, yeah, you seem really busy, man. I'm like, yeah, I am. Even if I wasn't, the perception was there, presented on social media. So people thought I was good. I mean, and then I got good. I wasn't that great when I started, but I got good to the point where I just kept putting my prices up, and you'd go through certain pricing thresholds, which is another thing to talk about. I remember I started doing live sound gigs for £200, including a PA.
Right, fuck.
And I had a band who I still know and still occasionally work for, not for that rate, who gave me some opportunities, and I cut my teeth very quickly. Then quickly went up to £300, and then from there it was like, well, okay, if I go any higher, I'm going to lose some clients, but I'm going to get a different set of clients and I can work half as much. So then I went up to the £600 bracket. This is with gear for a day's work, doing whatever size band, I didn't really care. And then at that point I was like, well, this is a massive ball. Like, I want to go to £1,000. So I went to £1,000 and I lost some clients, but then you're earning proper money. Even if it's once a week, you've done a day's work and you're on £4,000 a month and you're living pretty well to do this stuff the rest of the time. And there was a bit of a ceiling pre-COVID. Post-COVID, that ceiling went up again just because so many engineers got out of the game. People didn't want to do it. People realized how much hard work it was. So then the engineers that are remaining now are just on silly day rates. But the point being that manipulating people's perceptions, massaging people's perceptions in a certain direction can be key. And circling back to the audio animals concept, I understand why they do it. And I think they're doing something reasonably unique. And what they've done has been executed, I think, as well, if not better than you could expect. But Paul's right. People read the headlines. And as soon as I posted that, a mentor of mine, who you can probably guess, but I won't say who it is, rang me in no other terms, basically bollocked me over the phone. It was like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing that? You're ruining your reputation before you've even started. You will never get away from that business model. Nobody is going to go on your website and see the pricing structure. They're going to read the headline, which is, now we're on the other side of social media saturation. A lot of people don't read news articles. They read the headlines. And depending on what headline you read, that could be manipulated in different ways. And I think it's going to be the same as Paul said with the pricing structure. If you say you price from £150, keyword being from, it's too easy to overlook. People will write you off as mixing for £100. So I very quickly changed that to price on application, or POA. And my mentor said, start at £500, and if you need to, go down. But if not, that is the benchmark, and people will respect you and assume you're good if you're confident in charging that amount of money. And confidence is another big thing that will come into this big time. But if you set that benchmark, you can go down. It is impossible once you've got a client on a regular price to go up. And again, I know this from many years playing in bands and doing live sound. I had this discussion with one band leader rang us and said, right, this is a mate of mine. I'm doing him a favor. The fee's only this amount. It was like 50 quid short of what it would normally be. And I'm there thinking, well, he's not my mate, so why should I give him a discount? Like, you can offer him a discount. That can be your present to him. But I don't know him. It's not doing me any favors. And also, every single person at that wedding now thinks that your band is worth, say £1,500, right? Every guest at that wedding now thinks you're worth £1,500.
Yeah.
Everyone who hears the mix that you've done for 150 quid, every friend of theirs and referral thinks you charge 150 quid. So when you have to have the conversation with someone, a friend of someone you've mixed for, or a client, a friend of someone at that wedding who comes to you and says, what do you charge? And you say, oh yeah, we charge £2,000 for the wedding, or it's £500 a mix. They're like, yeah, but you charge them 1,500 quid or 150 quid. It's getting confusing, and people will then resent you even more. They'll be like, oh, well, they didn't give me the discount. I'm not special in this. They're not going to understand that you're friends with someone. So I would suggest, speaking of discounts, I did do an artist a discount this year. He very cleverly sold it to me. He said, oh yeah, I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on and managers looking at me, and I've got a whole bunch more songs that I'm going to send your way. And I was like, okay, cool. We'll do this first one at a discount. Did he come back? Did he fuck? He's never heard from him since.
Got stung.
And it's not that I got stung, because it was a useful experience.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, at the age of 38, with all the business experience I have, I was a little naive. I was optimistic. And he sold it well, to be fair. So my policy now is, with friends who ask me to mix stuff, it's, right, I either do it for you for free because I love you, because you're my mate, or you're paying full price. I'm not getting in this sticky bit in the ground, because you'll then say, oh yeah, you did me a discount, and the next person's like, why don't you do me a discount?
Yeah.
So there's definitely some client management.
If you don't have an in-house mastering engineer like we're fortunate enough to have with Marcel at Actu Make with the working audio tools, DistroKid have you covered. For just $99 a year, you can buy unlimited mastering for all of your tracks in tandem with unlimited releases via DistroKid. Mixair from DistroKid uses AI technology to measure the EQ and the dynamics of your track, and then present you with numerous options to tweak and customize your master. You can flip between the original and the generic mastered option.
escape. Blame it on a bad week.
So instantly we can hear that's making the track louder, and it's also slightly flattening the EQ, bringing in a little bit more of the mid-range and of course the top end. We can adjust the intensity, which is how much compression and limiting is being applied to the track.
Blame it on the only thing you've ever seen. Run and tell your mother. Blame it on your brother.
I think somewhere in the middle works for this track. And the EQ options are self-explanatory. We can make the track effectively duller or brighter.
Just ain't right. All you do is lie. All you do is try to deny. All you do is lie. Even when you know it just ain't right. All you do is lie.
Download your mastered track and release it as easily as you do all of your other unlimited uploads. Get 30% off your DistroKid subscription using the Working Audio Tools VIP link below.
Right, there's several things also we got to talk about. The pricing race to the bottom. How do we deal with Fiverr and the internet in general? I mean, I'm on Threads at the moment, entertaining that before it descends into the inevitable narcissistic, toxic vitriol that Twitter and X are. It won't be long. It'll happen. Don't worry, guys. It'll get there. But there's a bit of positivity there at the moment. And there's already the producers like, yeah, guys, can you like mix my track for $25? And people are saying, yeah, hit me up. And we're like, oh, they get hounded. They get nailed by some people. But that is going round. How do we compete with that? Now, I know how I'm going to compete with that is that I know I'm worth more than that. And somebody in the comments can say, no, you're not, Ed, otherwise you'll have a full diary of comments. That's possibly a fair point. That's, again, where the confidence and psychology comes in. But bullshit, I can do better mixes and that are worth way more than $25. So that's not even going to entertain me. So same with gigging. I've set price for gigs. You want me? This is what it costs. If you don't want me, cool. I'm charging so much for live sound. I can afford to do 1 day a week. I don't care if you don't want me. Move on. Not to be so ballistic or abrupt about it, but sometimes you just have to draw a line in the sand, and where you put those thresholds requires confidence and experience. So what are your thoughts on the race to the bottom? Like, how are you going to deal with being told in Scotland that you're expensive and other people are already undercutting you?
Look, see, at the end of the day, I am in a very, 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 very fortunate position that I have a full-time job. I have a full-time job. I have this podcast that pays for the studio. I am in a place in the world where I can have a fucking gigantic studio like this, and I pay buttons compared to, what other people in the UK have to pay for rent, right? So obviously I'm in a good position where I can have a studio and let it build slowly. My plan is to build it slowly like a house, right? And value my time and value the perception and keep the perception that I want to have. So I may lose, and I will lose, a lot of artists. However, the question that you've always got to ask yourself is, do you want those artists? You've got to get to a point of, do you want that work? Do you want to just be working? Okay, take whatever you can. But if you want to be in that position that Ed is in his live sim business, if you want to be in the position that the MSMs and the Spike Stents and the Prizzies and, the Tura Medinas and the Emrachelics and, all these successful mixers, the position they're in, yeah, okay, they started off and they did, what they could and they worked their way up. But they all knew the value of perception, as Ed's talked about. So for me dealing with it, it's not to fight it. It's genuinely to accept that I'm going to lose clients. That's my price. And that's always going to be the perception that I stick to. That's my price. This is the quality that you're going to get. This is the value that I'm going to try my best to give you. And if you don't want it or if you can't afford it, then there's other people that'll do it. And hopefully they will get to a point where maybe they don't get the quality that they were hoping for, which happens quite a lot. I was the same when I was in my band, and I realised the limitation of trying to do 3 songs in 3 hours. It's like ridiculous. And hopefully, many people will go through kind of, don't want to say bad experiences, but the realism hits them, and they get to a point where they think, you know what, see next time, let's spend a little bit more money and let's actually go to that guy. And the person that done the record might sit there and go, yeah, but I could do it better. I'll just charge you more. The quality, the bar has already been set. And what do most people do when they're not happy? They don't stick with the same person. They go someplace else and they pay a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that's how my kind of plan is, just not to fight it and accept I'm going to lose gigs and, you know, hopefully build it like a house and take artist by artist by artist and look for vessels. I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. Going to gigs, I'm very surprised that my wife's okay with it. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to have to leave the house and leave you and go to gigs and stuff.
Get a babysitter and double it up as date night. 2 birds.
I know, I was thinking that. I was thinking that. So obviously I'm going to try and get myself out there and network, but I don't have an issue of maybe doing a discount when it comes to an artist that I truly believe in. If I sit there and think, you've got potential, I really do think that
was going to be my next question. What are you going to do if someone comes to you and say, look, I've got this track, I think it's great, my budget's not great, but it's probably going to be picked up by Radio Scotland. I can pay you 200 quid. What are you saying?
I do it. If I truly believe in the artist, and I do believe that they're going to be, you know, like the next Lewis Capaldi, or at least they're going to be a successful artist that I can use to further my career, then Jason Joshua talked a lot about that.
Find your vessel. Correct.
So I would stick to my guns in terms of how I perceive myself and how I value my time within reason of the artist. And that's what I said. I don't want to demean artists. There's a lot of work out there for, you know, young bands that are coming up. But I've said it to a few people. I've kind of lost a few gigs already because a few people have came to me and been like, oh yeah, like, Ed, you know it, like everybody knows this. Like my son's pal, they've got a band and they're like 16. They're really good. They've done like a few gigs in the pub and that, and Paul, I think they're going to be fucking massive, eh? And I'm sitting there going, right, okay.
Thinking, hang on, what do you do for a living, sir? Oh, I'm in construction. Right, so you know the square root of fuck all about music. Your opinion means nothing. With all due respect, I'm not going to take your word for it.
So obviously, I'd be like, and I did it, and I was like, right, go send me a video, right? And I was like, right, okay. And then it was funny, because I knew the response. I was 30 seconds in, and he went, aye, they're a wee bit rough around the edges, like, but... I was like,
here we go. Yeah,
here we go. So I was like, look, I could tell they were unrehearsed. I could tell that they were just a band starting out. And I said, look, that's my price, mate. He's like, oh, right. Could you maybe do a bit cheaper? I was like, look, mate, that's my price. And actually, mate, I just said that. I was like, look, I didn't think they're going to be the right fit for me. My advice would be go out, get loads and loads of gigs, build up a portfolio of songs that they're happy with. Really, the best time to come to me is when they're gigging, again, they're selling out places, they're doing really well. They can come to me, I can get it done properly. And again, it might sound a bit dickish, but my thing with that conversation was, if you come to me, I'll do it properly. I'm not saying to you that they can't get a recording. It's just that if they want one, you can go to that person and they'll do it.
Do you know what you've done there? That is brilliant client management, client expectation management, and encouraging and coaching at the same time as well. And you've done yourself a favour. You've not put yourself in a stressful situation where they're expecting miracles and they just can't deliver it. But also, you've created an opportunity, because hopefully they'll go away, do 50 gigs and come back and be like, Paul said come back. You know, that might even spur them on. So I think that's solid what you've done there. Now, if you were in a position where someone said, I can only give you 250 quid, or what I've had already, which is a classic, is, right, can you mix and master this for £100? We'll give you 3% on the recording. And I'm like, oh, right. Now, I did some tracks for this artist for £100, mixed with a kind of client master, as I call it, basically limiting the master bus. And what transpired, inevitably, was that the sessions were a shit show. The vocals were terribly recorded. The production was weak as piss. You know, it was awful. And I couldn't do anything good with it. So I was working my arse off for shit money with shit audio. And guess what? Shit came out. And they've not come back because they're like, oh, well, that's not very good. It's like, well, hang on a minute. I don't think it's that I'm not very good. It's just, how do I politely tell you that what you've delivered me is shit? because you're expecting everyone else in the chain to do things for free because you don't value your own music. How can you expect other people in the chain to then give a shit if you don't pay them accordingly for their skills, or you're getting everyone to do it for free? Don't get me wrong, some people will do stuff for free. I've done stuff for free. Paul's done stuff for free. We all have to do it. Sometimes we do it because we enjoy it, or as Paul said, sometimes there's an opportunity too good to be missed. There's nothing wrong with working for free for experience, but in my experience, that lower end, that £100, £150 end of the mixing industry is fraught with problems. So again, what you're doing at £300 is saying, that's my threshold. I'm not prepared to work for that, because underneath that level, maybe a bit lower than that, because I've had some wonderful clients at £200 and £250 a mix. Underneath that though, you're into problematic territory, to be polite about it. But what I was offered on a couple of things was 3%. Now, 3% of fuck all is the square root of fuck all. So it's worth nothing. But if you did have the next Lewis Capaldi, fuck me, 3% of his biggest single, that's buy a house and retire money. But it is 1 in a billion. I mean, if you've got 100,000 songs, if you've got 500 million songs going up on Spotify every year, at least 100,000 a day times 365, getting up towards 500 million songs a year, the chances of the one you're doing standing out is just, it's not even worth entertaining. It's a fart in the wind. It's gone, unless there's some backing behind it. But if there's backing behind it, there's probably some attentiveness to the music and some self-respect and some value somewhere. Even if it's, I don't know, there's something somewhere. You've got to suss it out, I think. And this is where it's so tricky. But ultimately, communication, as you've said, as you did with the artist of the young teenage band, you communicated effectively. You didn't get the job, but you did the right thing, I think, saying what you said there. And, communicating what you need. I've gone back to these people and said, I can't do it for that. This is my price now. And they've not hired me, fine, but also they've not done anything since.
Now, I did mention earlier that I was going to show you a very brief example of SONIBLE Smart EQ4 in action. As you can see, I am utilising the Smart EQ4 grouping function in order to sort out some clashing that I had in the background vocals of this specific multitrack. If you are interested in Smart EQ4, then check out the link in the description.
We've covered managing expectations, price filtering we've just mentioned, the race to the bottom on Fiverr we briefly discussed. I mean, that's just a matter of self-worth and self-value. Factoring that in, we're talking about global competition. And this is where things also get difficult, because there's not so much of a race to the bottom, although we have seen shocking prices. I saw an Indian fella charging, what was it, $15 for a $25 or something for a 2-track mix. Just silly low money that we can't possibly compete with. That might be a week's wages for him. You don't know. But then I think skill and ability will always rise to the top. At least I do hope and hold on to that. But global competition is interesting, because I have spoken to people who have hired people in Eastern Europe, and these have been ridiculously good mix engineers, charging £150, which is probably the equivalent of £300, if not £450 in the UK. Money does go a lot further still in Eastern Europe. How do we compete with that? I don't know. Again, but it's who you know. My other clients don't know that person in Romania, so they're not going to have the benefit of meeting that person. Also, that person only specialises in metal, which might not be what they're specializing in. So word of mouth is, I think, possibly the key one here. But I want to tie that in with going back to the pricing, the Audio Animals pricing. Sorry, Paul, if you're listening to this. I love you, man. But
We're calling it the Audio Animals pricing because I think you've coined that structure quite well. Now, my social media marketing guy today that I was considering employing to basically do some Instagram and Facebook ads to get the brand out there, he'd seen what I'd done about the pricing from £150 a mix for a 2-track, that is, and then the price on application. And he said, right, if we're going to do this kind of marketing, and I said again, the Audio Animals do a really good job of it on Instagram, I think. And he said, right, what they're doing is they are, because of their pricing structure, it is very easy to sell a product and a package. You click on their link and it goes to whatever they need and they can buy it straight away. If you're saying you don't know what your price is because it depends on the artist, how many songs it is, you get whatever you want to factor into that price that you give them, you need to have a conversation, and that requires a phone call. And a lot of people, I think, are so used to an instant delivery system. People almost want to order a mix either from someone they know, or if it is from a stranger, it's got to be so easy. It's like ordering something off Amazon. And that's again where Audio Animals have nailed it. You can go on their website and within, I think Paul and I ran through it once. It's like from landing on the website, you can select a product and pay for it, I think within 4 clicks, which is a remarkably streamlined sales funnel. And my social media marketing guy said, if you can do that, I can give you good return on investment for specific targeted adverts towards different demographics when they have somewhere to go. But if you need to factor in a phone call, that's a whole nother hurdle. And a lot of people want to hide behind a computer and not actually have the face-to-face calls. Again, people who just want a quick fix. Yeah, I don't really know what mixing and mastering is. Oh, that guy does it for 150 quid. Cool, let's just book that. Pay for it online. Oh, I don't really want to speak to someone because he, might discover that I'm not actually that good or something. I don't know. You don't know what insecurities people have that would dictate they might want to hide behind a phone. Again, psychology is a big one. So, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I basically left the conversation with him being like, okay, I need to pick a lane. I either go down the specific product route, like Paul does Audio Animals, which I think is great, or go down the fixed price and work in discounts if I feel that's acceptable, which is what my mentor said. What are your thoughts on that?
Here's my thoughts. Now, again, I come from a different world, having a retail background. My, whole ethos throughout my entire retail career was always repeat customers. Now, the only way that you get repeat customers is by building relationships with them. It's 2 things. You build a relationship, but you also meet their needs, and you meet their needs to a high standard, right? So this is where it gets difficult. Now, Paul Ashmore has Audio Animals. Where they're really clever is that they have one of the most expensive studios, arguably, in London. You can see the amount of gear that they have, and it's an abundance as you go on their website. Now, obviously, there is never ever going to be a question of, are these guys professional? Because they've already got the credits. They've got all the X-Men stuff. They've got all the movie stuff. And again, they've worked with so many clients. They've got they don't have to worry about their perception. So they can go to, say, 150 start off, and then somebody can go in and buy it, like the way you said. However, the reason that I wouldn't do that is because my ethos is personality. I don't want to be a service, and that's my choice. This studio is all about experience for me, and you've got to make a decision on whether you see yourself as a service or you see yourself as an experience. I want people in the studio. Okay, it'd be great to work globally, and I have worked globally. I've worked for people in Canada and America and Germany, and where was the other one? Yeah, a few Scottish people, a few English people. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the studio, I want people in here. I want to make music with people. I want to get people in. I want to build relationships, because the problem is when you see yourself as a service, it's a throwaway thing. If they see you just like going to the shops and getting a bar of Snickers, right? Many people see the modern world of engineers almost like a tuck shop. It's just like, I can go to any shop. I can go to Greg's. If it's dinner, it's like, oh, I can go to Greg's. I can go to here. I can go to there. I can go to this baker's. I can go to there. right? The whole premise of my business is you come to Taysound for Taysound and you come for me as well. Now, when I was in retail, one of the biggest reasons that people came back was, one, because the company that I worked for was able to provide the service that they wanted. Well, take that back. They were able to provide the product that they wanted, but they specifically came back to me because I provided the service that they were after. This is a service industry. The people that are arguably some of the biggest in the game have taken time to build relationships with their artists. When we get them on this podcast, they talk about constantly their conversations that they have with artists.
Isn't it? Relationships.
It may sound like a service thing, and there are when you get to certain, elements of the audio industry, and you do get, to your Serbins and stuff like that. There's a lot of times that they will never really have a conversation with a client. It may be an A&R that's in the middle, and it depends. But where we are, we're not at that level in that industry. Where we are, I am just a very, very, very firm believer that it's a service industry, and you got to build relationships and get that repeat. Because what have you found just now, Ed? That you've went cheap and they've never came back. Essentially, in my opinion, he's fucking used you. He's came in. He's trying to give you the 3% thing. There's no personality there. There's no relationship. When you build a relationship with people, they came back. Again, like when I was at Topps Tiles, I used to get tilers from other places, and they would shop with me, and they would come to me specifically and ask for me because I built a relationship. I knew my stuff. Like, if you can imagine the Paul Third that's in audio, think of that in tiles, right? I rabbit hole tiles. I knew way too much, and I wasn't even a tiler.
This one's a square one, sir, and this one's a rectangular one, and this one fits in corners. And
honestly, I know. Like, I was into science. I was educating fucking tilers, for God's sake. But again, it was the same way wherever I worked. I was an honest salesperson, and you came back for me. And it was always that thing where when people came back, they would ask for me. As Paul in the day, all right, now he's in next week. I'll come back. That's the sign of a really, really, and you would say a good salesperson, but it's the sign of a good relationship. It's the sign of somebody that's given somebody a really good service. And it's that relationship. See, when I was in retail, the reason I was so successful, and I was always top sales, right? I was very sales driven. It's funny because people look at me on YouTube now, and I'm like, now shilling, and now this, and now it's all transparency. I still sold completely. I sold you what you needed, but I was very sales driven, and I was very numbers driven. But I had very good morals behind it, and I just know as it built my ego up because I would be top sales, and I'd look around, and it'd be like, especially when I was at Carpetrite, I was looking around going, fucking hell, Jesus Christ, you would sell shit to your granny, Jesus Christ. And then I'd be like looking at them going, I'm your manager, and even I'd beat you this week. And I'd do it honestly. And I actually got a lot of trouble when I was in Carpetrite, because I was like, I basically walked in and seen all these bad practices. We're stopping that. And I lost the company money because I believed in customer retention. And that's something that I think as an audio engineer, especially in the competitive world that we're in, customer retention and relationships are the key thing in building up your business. At the end of the day, who does Ed Sheeran go to? Spike. He doesn't go to anybody else. Who does Taylor Swift go to? Serban Guinea. Doesn't go to anybody else. Why? Because they've got that relationship with them and they trust them. And that's what you've got to be looking at. That's how you get yourself out of the bottom barrel, right? Don't scrape the barrel. You know what I mean? Like, just sit there and look and go, right, if you're happy to scrape the barrel and go through all of that. I'm going to sit here, play the long game, and that's what it is. It's a long game. If people want out there and want to scrape the bottom of every barrel that's going, they could do that. Me, I want to look for a really nice fucking, I was going to say a really nice barrel. This is turning into a terrible analogy. But you know what I mean.
A nice
like,
aged oak, whiskey-soaked barrel.
That's it, yeah. That's what I'm after, man. I'm Scotsman, right? I want the fucking good shit, right? I want to get the fucking...
digging around the back of the distillery next door. So this brings me on to the last thing I wanted to talk about, really, which was two concepts that I have, one I've definitely employed and one I've discussed with people to no avail yet. The first one being basically spec before you buy. So actually, both concepts are spec before you buy, but I've done it in the sense of, from a mixing point of view, if you go on my website, and feel free to do this, guys. If you go on my website and you want to hear how your track will sound mastered, send it over and I will master it for you. And I'll do that for free. And I will upload a 30-second before and after clip to mixup.audio, which is a great tool if you haven't used that. People can listen to the before and after, match to the same LUFS level, and they can A/B the two. And you can set it so they can't download the tracks. So you're giving people an idea of what you can do. And I've done this now probably on a dozen tracks for people. I've had a couple of people buy them because they've liked what I've done. But a lot of people haven't come back and a lot of people have not even heard from. So it's not massively cost effective. The reason I do that is because I thought, well, while I'm offering mastering to clients who don't understand the difference between mixing and mastering, I may as well put it out there. It's a bit of a double-edged sword for me in terms of I'm getting the experience by mastering for these people of loads of different genres of music that I would have never come across otherwise. I've done a calypso track, a drum and bass track, which was slamming, kind of a funky soul disco thing, all sorts of stuff. It's been really cool, really fun. And I've been practicing mastering and honing my chain. And a couple of people have paid for it, which is great. Now, the same thing I've tried to offer for mixing with new artists. Again, talking about building a relationship. Look, you guys have got your team. That's cool, but send me some stems. I would love to do a mix for you. But the idea being, it's not free. I'm going to do you the mix, put it on mixup.audio so they can hear it. And if they want it, then we'll discuss a fee. Now, in my mind, that approach makes sense, but it's not come to fruition yet. So clearly there's something amiss. And actually, audience-wise, from you guys listening, I'd quite like your feedback on that. But Paul, what are your thoughts on that? Would you do a spec mix for someone to listen to with the intention of if they want to release it, they can buy it?
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say no, because I'm not a firm believer of, because you're still having to master the track. So you're essentially working for free in the hope that you'll get paid, where I've just always been of the mindset of, no, I'll work when you pay me. That's just the way I am. And I think YouTube's very much, the same way. There's been times that, we have, done the odd paid video, and it's not a case of like, yeah, I'll make the video, I'll send it to you, and then if you like it, then you can pay me for it. That does not work that way. So that's the way I see it.
I'm doing the video, you pay me.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, with the mastering, it was a case of, I just want as many tracks to master as possible. Mm-hmm. I just really enjoy mastering, it turns out. So it's a two birds with one stone sort of vibe. I may get a paycheck out of it, but if not, I've got experience and I've got things for my portfolio, because I am saying to them, look, I'm going to use it on my portfolio, and that's part of the deal.
But remember, mastering's different. Like, again, you can master a song in fucking 15 minutes, but like a mix is a completely different thing. Mastering, yeah, I think, again, Chris Graham did it for a long time, so I would agree. I would say, yeah, mastering could be a little bit more beneficial, but at the same time, you've got to remember what people charge for mastering. It's normally like 50 quid a master. So you've got to think, if you're doing all that, again, it's not like with a mix that you're getting, at least you might get fucking 300, 500 pound out of it. You're getting 50 quid. So it's all about, this is a hard one, Ed, because your situation has positives to it, because you're getting a lot out of getting people's tracks to master. So it's kind of situation based. I like the aspect of it that you've managed to get a lot of experience, work on different genres and stuff, and you've given yourself a chance to get work. But you couldn't. I don't think you could sustain that business model all the time. Like, could you imagine sitting to Spike Stent and going, "Yeah, Spike, so you just do me a spec mix. I'll give it a listen, and then I'll let you know if I'm wanting to pay for it." You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get your point, but it's a bit of a long game. And a good example of this I had this week was I got in contact with a band via Instagram, and it just happened that they just recorded an EP, so they didn't need the mixing work, but they said, cool, can we send you a track to master? And I, annoyingly, for whatever reason, didn't see this email for 3 days, and then got back to them and said, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. And they said, right, actually, we've found someone else. And I said, oh, right, balls, no worries. Was it because I was slow? And they said, yeah, look, we want to move on it pretty quickly. So I was like, right, I failed there big time. I didn't get back to them immediately, which I think a lot of people expect. But I said to them, look, send me the track anyway. I'd love to have a listen, and I'd love to have a go, and then you can get an alternative perspective. So they sent the track through. I mastered it, sent them 2 versions, and said, which one do you prefer? In other words, trying to get them to engage in the conversation. And they did. He came back to me and said, actually, we really like what you've done. We've paid this guy for now, but we'll definitely chat when we're doing the album. I don't know if they'll come back. They might be happy with what the guy has done, but if I've done a better job and they think, oh, actually, we've made a mistake here, but it's already gone to Spotify, we'll go to Ed next time. They might do that, or they might be like, nah, whatever, we like the guy. We'll stick with him. It's hard to bust in on people who already have their team around them, I'm finding. But I don't know, that might turn in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, a year's time, that might turn into an album's worth of mastering. I don't know. But the conversation's been had, the relationship's been established. So my current thinking about all this pricing thing is have the conversation, because as you said, you want to filter out the crap and you want to create a relationship. Understand the client's needs and compromise on price where necessary if you believe in the project, with a view to building the long-term relationships. Now, you and I are both in fortunate positions. You've got your full-time job, so you don't need this work.
Yeah.
And I had a year, after I sold my live sound company, I had a year of only working in the studio. And the YouTube was making me money. You know, the podcast was paying my rent. YouTube was paying for the studio, and doing the odd drum gig, that was paying for stuff, and, you know, sponsored videos, etc., was paying a little bit. And then, but very quickly I was running out of money, thinking, okay, I'm going to start selling things in the studio to fund a bit of rent. I'm running out of things to sell. Shit, this isn't working out. And then my housemate was like, dude, you're a great live sound engineer and you know everyone in London. Why aren't you doing that? So I got back into doing live sound, and it's literally been the difference between, it's significant money if I do 2 gigs a week. It's the difference between struggling and having money to do stuff, buy stuff, go away. And I fucking know which one I prefer. And I'm staggered I let myself get into that rut that I was in where I was getting miserable. I was worried about money. I was getting a bit depressed, if I'm honest, earlier this year. And, you know, I'm grateful to Luke, my housemate, for having that conversation, that blunt, frank conversation that only a really close friend could have. And now I feel way better because the pressure's off the studio. Yep. So I've come around to the idea that, okay, you and I have been, since we've been doing this iteration of the podcast, I think is where we've both been really trying to take off as mix engineers. And I think maybe certainly I did, underestimated just how long it would take to A, get good enough, and B, network enough to build clients. So if we've been doing this, a year? Say a year and a half we've been going at this. I'm giving myself a 5-year window. Now, if we're still having this conversation in 3 years' time, fuck that. You know,
no, I agree with you.
It's time for me to knuckle down on what I am good at and connected at, which would be live sound. And there's various opportunities for me to do that if I want. I mean, I've basically been offered a full-time job working for a huge production company. I got offered a job at quite a big audio company doing video content for them. I'm literally seeing opportunities everywhere that aren't in this, ironically, but I don't want them yet. If I need to use a backup plan and do that and just do music as a hobby, I might get to a point where I accept that. I'm not there yet. I am determined to make this work, and these are all teething problems, but I have come around to the idea that I have time. And I think also on a more macro level, economically and globally, let's face it, we're in a bit of a recession.
Yeah, but
who knows how the American election's going to go? Who knows how various wars are going to go after that? Who knows what the cost of living and mortgage crisis, what that's going to look like in the next couple of years? There's a shortage of disposable income for a lot of people. So, but we will probably come through that. You know, after bust, there's a boom. Boom, there's a bust. So if we can be around until then to then profit when everyone else has fallen by the wayside, but if we've got fingers in as many different pies as possible so we survive and come out the other side, even better engineers than we are now, I think we'll be in a good position.
It's a long game, mate. It's a long game. And I think that's probably the best way to end the podcast. Obviously, it would be great if anybody in the comments would be able to kind of share their own experiences. Again, if you've kind of made it and you're a full-time mixing engineer, and share your struggles. Again, if I know everybody doesn't want to share their business, but if you can, share your pricing and maybe some of the experiences, and, you know, again, just share it. I think the comments section in this episode should really be a place for, you know, growth and development, and, you know, for many people to look into it. And, you know, we just need to get into the weeds of it, and we need to have more conversations like this, because as me and Ed have found out, you know, it's very difficult to get the kind of answers that you're looking for if you don't have people already doing this as a profession, where this podcast, has become really, 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 really handy. So yeah, it's going to be a journey. Obviously, me and Ed will probably have a good solid year cracking at it. My studio will be open. After a year, I'll be able to evaluate how everything is. And yeah, there we go. So yes, as always, like, subscribe, share, and again, share the podcast amongst all your engineering friends to get this podcast out there. We're trying to grow this as much as possible. I've been Paul Third. That's been Ed Thorne. Leave your comments down below, and we'll see you again next week.
It's been emotional.